Hi, and welcome to this month's episode of our Diversity and Inclusion vodcast or podcast, Addressing the Elephant in the Room. I'm Lindsay Bridges, and during this series, I will be exploring DHL Supply Chain UK and Ireland's journey on our D&I agenda. We're addressing a range of diversity topics through discussions with colleagues across the business. During March, we celebrated International Women's Day. And so this month, I'm delighted to be talking to two of our senior operational leaders from the UK and Ireland business, Lucy Parker and Nicola Crick. And so I'm going to start and I'm going to ask Lucy, first of all. It's great to have you on the programme. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your early career and maybe some of those challenges that you faced during that time.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, so I'm my most important role, I guess, is that of mum to my 7-year-old son Daniel. But yeah, so first and foremost, that's my key role. But within DHL, I've been with DHL for 15 years. But prior to that, my early career was largely in warehousing and transport with a variety of predominantly food retailers. And my very first role was in a chilled warehouse working for a large food retailer. And I was kind of fresh out of university, went into my first graduate placement and found myself in a chilled warehouse up in the northeast of England. And it was a steep learning curve coming from an environment up in Edinburgh where, it's a very diverse, inclusive, the university kind of environment was so different to what I found myself in that first role. So I think some of the key challenges were just kind of adjusting to that first job and kind of getting used to being accountable for, delivering performance and, helping people, managing an operation. So it was a real difference in environment for me. And I think in my early career sort of challenges being a female in that kind of operational environment, I kind of saw that in sometimes quite confrontational behaviour, which was quite challenging. But that was always offset in that first role by some great colleagues that really taught me, kind of the basics of operations management. So I kind of look back on that period with, some difficult memories, but also some great memories.
Oh, that's great to hear, Lucy. I mean, my first role as well was in an operational role, so I can really relate to, some of those challenges thrown into what is, I guess, in the industry quite male-dominated in the environment. Yeah. And Nicola, you came straight into the business right out of high school, didn't you?
Yeah, so I joined the business when I was a teenager. Yeah, some time ago now. It was difficult to adapt to that first role within the logistics industry. I started as a warehouse colleague, so picking, packing, and I remember that I was the only female on shift at that time as well. So yeah, a lot of adapting and trying to sort of fit in with the whole ethos of warehouse work at that time.
And what sort of challenges did either of you have to overcome through not that just that early career, but as you've grown your career, what are the kind of main things that you've had to work through?
I think for me, it's been just largely, and definitely not so much more recently, but largely being on a management team that is, virtually 99% male. And when I joined a new company, my second major role, I found it quite difficult to integrate with that new team and kind of find my place and kind of find my level of communication. And I think I feel like it took me a little bit longer to get up to speed than maybe it would have in a different scenario. So that would be my experience, that kind of communication and team fit, really.
Yeah, and I think from me, Lindsay, finding my voice and knowing that my voice was respected and listened to in those early days, and having the confidence to project myself. I've done a lot of work on that, and that would be certainly something that I've took from my sort of early days within the business.
Yeah, it's interesting that you both say, finding a way to fit into a team that maybe is a little bit different, and having that confidence is really quite challenging, isn't it? Now, like me, you are both working mums, and I'm sure, like me, that brings its own challenges, as we have various roles that we play. Tell me a little bit about being a working mum, because this is a question I get asked a lot by some of the younger females in our business.
Yeah, so I think so first of all, I've got two boys. Lewis is 14 now, and Harley is 11, and they are my world. They really are wonderful boys, and I like to think that I'm creating a role model atmosphere for them, and they can see me developing over time the career, and they obviously see what I do every day at work, really, because I come home and talk to them. Don't get me wrong. Listen, I've struggled with. I don't know if Lucy can relate to a bit of a mum guilt at the beginning. So first of all, that transition from, working full time, then going on to maternity leave, whole different ethos and culture, and bringing up a baby, right, another human into the world, and then the transition back into the workplace. I found challenging. And I think the other thing I'd like to point out on this is me and my husband made an agreement quite early on that I would go back to work full time and he would be the main carer for the two boys. So again, that was a difficult transition through those times of coming back to work.
Well, that is quite challenging, isn't it? I mean, I have the same scenario. My husband gave up work full time when our daughter was born, and back then, that was 22 years ago for me. That was quite unusual back then, and so quite challenging for him to fit into that kind of childcare mum environment as well.
Yeah, and I suppose that society, especially going back a few years, Lindsay, I don't know if you experienced it, but there was sometimes some sort of odd looks and questions about, so Steve's gonna take the boys to school and look after them, and you're gonna be working full time and traveling around the country. And he is a massive support to my journey, and I believe that together we've created a really good team environment at home to enable me to do that, and for him to be at home with the boys, and that was a mutual agreement.
Yeah, I think having that supportive partner at home, whether they're full-time at home or whether they're both working as well, it's really important. And Lucy, I guess you find that coming back to work too.
Yeah, I think it's an important point. I mean, coming back or transitioning back into work. I mean, I had 12 months off, so I left a busy operational GM role and came back to that role. But my experience was just something that I'll never forget, really. I mean, my line manager at the time, had a couple of meetings with him before I came back to work, and I don't know, he just got it. He kind of gave me the first couple of months back into the work environment. He made sure I wasn't accountable for operational delivery. He kind of gave me a little to-do list: go and see these people because this has changed, go back and see the scheduling team because that's changed. And he literally put this protective bubble around me when I came back from maternity leave. And sadly he's no longer with us, but I will never forget that kind of approach that he took, and how he'd thought about making that experience as good as it can be for me. And I think as your children start to grow up, it is a bit of a guilt thing when you have a busy operational role and you're kind of working out how much time you're spending with your children. But I suppose one of the things that worked for me as Daniel got older is really talking to him about what I do. And when I was working down in one of the airports and was away from home a lot, he came at the weekend to visit, and we went to see the aircraft. Obviously from landside, and he kind of got it, and he still points out the airline aircraft when he sees them in the air, and he remembers that as an early experience. So I think involving him and talking to him about what I do has been really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. That whole sort of finding the trucks when we're on the motorway and talking about specifics, and to know that your kids see you as role models and can relate to what you do, I think it's so rewarding, isn't it? So rewarding.
It is, and it really brings out that pride in not just the business, but actually the work that we all do and the contribution that we make. And Lucy, I love the point that you make around the support from your line manager coming back. I mean, that's a brilliant example of how a line manager can really be an ally to to somebody who's been on maternity leave or even paternity or parental leave. Coming back into the workplace and having that right understanding is a huge factor in terms of making us feel comfortable. That's really good.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to change tack a little bit now, and I'm going to talk about some of the perceptions that are out there in the world around women in management roles. And there's a bit of a perception that says, we're too soft to be in management roles, and our leadership style doesn't work, or there's no room for emotion in leadership. And I'd really love to hear what you both think about that.
Do you know what? I'm okay with a bit of emotion, actually, Lindsay. I think I think emotion in the right scenario is it should be seen as a quality and a skill, actually. But I will say over time there has been this thing about, is it emotion or is it assertiveness? And I've sort of got my own mind around that, and I'm comfortable with that. But I understand that there is perhaps a perception that we as women leaders can be emotional in certain situations.
Yeah, I think for me, I guess it's been helpful that I think our understanding of what makes great leadership has changed, and some of those things around authenticity and kind of showing a different side to yourself has become much more acceptable, and I think maybe that's played into what could be described as a more female approach in leadership. But oh crikey, I've had times where my nickname for a while was Ice Queen. And I think that was just because I was so concentrated and I would do my briefings in a very set, clear fashion. And, I kind of had that nickname for a while. But I think, over the last few years that's definitely changed. And it's very much more about our female leaders just being themselves at work and trying to be something different from what they are.
I think I can really relate to what you're saying, Lucy, just being comfortable about your own style, right? And being able to adapt that in the right situations, I think is incredibly important.
I think I agree with you both there. This is all about bringing our authentic selves to work and being who we are at work and being comfortable in our own skin doing that. And Lucy, I guess I've been a bit like you as well. People see me as very processed and focused and to the point and boom and direct. But actually it is, that's just my structure. But there's a soft side as well to all of us. And it's so, there's an element of humility as well in terms of authenticity and bringing that, as you said. It's really good. So in terms of being able to wrap this up a little bit, and I'm really enjoying this conversation, I could let it go on. What advice would you give another female starting out on their career in logistics?
Okay, I suppose, Lindsay, the first thing to sort of say is that I was given some advice when I first joined the business from a senior leader. And he said to me, whatever happens, Nicola, wherever you go, whatever you do, always be yourself, be the best version of yourself, work hard, and good things will come in terms of your career. And that has really stuck with me. So being yourself, being authentic, I think is incredibly important. The other thing that's really helped me is creating alliances around the business, good networking, people to talk to, and having some good mentors and asking for those, putting yourself out there in terms of opportunities to have a mentor. So they would be a couple of my points.
Yeah, so I, as well, Lindsay, I'd agree. I think that kind of being yourself and being true to yourself for me has been really important, because I think there are, maybe there's certain behaviours and styles that we can learn and adapt, but, we've all got a kind of default setting, which is our true self and our personality. And I think just being true to that is really important. And you come to work as yourself every day. You tend to be the best version and perform as well as you can. And I think what I would add to that as well, certainly from my perspective, is sometimes be a little bit brave and have a bit of courage in taking a new opportunity, in taking a stretch assignment that you might think, oh, crikey, I'm not sure I can do that. But those, from my experience, are the times when I've, really benefited the most and gained some great experience and development opportunities as a result.
Yeah, I think you've both given some great ideas there. I mean, the clear message coming out from both of you, bring yourselves to work and be your authentic self. I think that's really important, no matter who you are in the business. But I love the ideas around networking. I think that is critical for anyone wanting to progress in their career, and being brave, being courageous. And for me, I would add to that, take the road less traveled. If you've got a couple of opportunities, kind of go for the one that might be a bit unusual and a bit more difficult, because you'll probably find that is more rewarding in the long term, even though it feels probably quite difficult first up.
Yeah, the unknown, Lindsay, sometimes is the most exciting place to be, isn't it? And I've certainly learned that.
So, Nicola and Lucy, thank you both very much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your insights, for talking to us about some of those challenges that you've faced in your career, the support you've had to overcome those challenges. I think that's really insightful for people listening to us today. And also some of the advice that you would give in terms of mentoring, networking, and most importantly, I think, bringing your best self to work and having the confidence to be yourself at work every day. So thank you. So that wraps up episode 3, but stay tuned for episode 4, where I'm going to be talking to some colleagues in our business who are going to give us some ideas around allyship and what it is that you can do to be a better ally in the diversity and inclusion agenda. And you can follow us on this podcast on Spotify, on iTunes, and even on YouTube. Thanks a lot.